When the world tightens its fist, the spaces between heartbeats expand into rooms where secrets live. Emma learned this the way someone learns a new language, by hearing it everywhere and finally understanding the words that were being whispered about her. After the envelope at the cafe, Emma stopped being a person with a problem and started being a case file. She kept the photo, the one with the black wings stamped in the corner, taped inside a notebook. At night, she lay awake and traced the wing with her thumb until the ink blurred into a question. She began to notice the architecture of attention around her, which cars idled longer than necessary, which street cameras pivoted when she walked by, the same man in a gray coat appearing in a dozen background shots of neighborhood doorways. Paranoia is an expensive suit. It must be measured and tailored to fit. Emma measured hers with care. Before we dive in, don't forget to like this video, hit the subscribe button, and tell me in the comments section where you are watching from. Now let's begin. Cal Turner, the reporter, called again. "I found something," he said, voice low. "Not public. A ledger. Old names. It's messy." He insisted on meeting at a library archive rather than a cafe. He said he didn't want to tip the people who hadn't even noticed they were being tipped. They met between stacks of yellowed newspapers. Cal's eyes were ringed in sleepless blue. He pushed a thin folder across the table. On the top sheet, a typed donor list dated 20 years ago. Among the corporate entries, in handwriting that wasn't corporate at all, someone had added a single name, Rivera Foundation, and beside it, the initials EB. Emma's breath became a thing that existed elsewhere. The initials matched the faded handwriting on the baby photo she'd found in her mother's old boxes. She fingered the paper as if she might lift the past out of it like a coin. "Why would someone add your mother's name to an old ledger?" she asked. Cal rubbed his temples. Two possibilities. 1. Someone wanted to create a breadcrumb trail that leads to you. 2. Someone is trying to rewrite history so a particular version of the truth gets told. Emma's eyes slid to the nearest stack of newspapers. In the margins, a graffiti tag repeated itself on different dates, a small black wing, imperfect, as if stamped by habit. Cal followed her gaze. "You're not the first person this wing has pointed to," he said. "There are mentions, lawsuits, quiet donations, a veil of trust that dissolve when they're looked at too closely. I can access the public bits, but the private trusts are armored. They divided work. Cal would chase legal filings, friends in court registries, anything bound by statute. Emma would keep to the neighborhoods, the murmurs, the human edges where a ledger can be found in a kitchen drawer or dropped in a trash bag. It was a simple plan and a desperate one. Both were useful. Mrs. Lawson's name kept surfacing like a bruise. Emma wanted to confront her, but the woman had already given a performance of contrition and retreat after the fundraiser, stepping back at work and offering careful, brittle kindness. When Emma asked a pointed question about the Rivera Foundation, Mrs. Lawson's face folded into something older. "You're chasing ghosts," she said once, hands on the edge of the director's desk. "Some names are meant to be talismans. They keep people quiet and give other people something to hold while they build the scaffolding." That phrasing landed wrong in Emma's chest. Scaffolding for what? For a building of influence? For a machine that ate reputations and called it governance? On a rain-wet Thursday, Emma found an unlocked basement at a church where a retired accountant sold shredded documents to artists. People used paper like they used faith to make something other than the truth. Among cardboard boxes labeled old receipts, she discovered a ledger with water-stained pages. Names, amounts, annotations in a tiny, specific script. In the margins, a looping EP, and the note, Project Blackwing Pilot Cohort. Her hands trembled. The phrase had the weight of a headline. She photographed each page with her phone, her fingers clumsy, the lens capturing ink and the faint fingerprint of someone who had once held power with a left hand and guilt with a right. That night, the man in the gray coat knocked at her door. Emma watched him through the peephole, breath held like an animal listening for footfalls. He did not force the lock. He left a single business card on the mat. A. Voss Consultant. No company, no trace. Her name typed below in plain font. She called Cal and read him the name. He cursed softly. "Voss shows up in a dozen corporate filings as an intermediary," he said. "He opens doors that never existed and closes them before anyone remembers a threshold. Be careful." 2 days later, a package arrived at Emma's apartment without a return address, a thin, black binder wrapped in brown paper. Inside, photocopies of internal memos, meeting minutes, a printed email thread. At the bottom of each page, stamped in a rubber mark, the imperfect black wing. One memo chilled her more than the rest. Dated a decade earlier, subject line, Phase 1 Containment and Narrative Management. Paragraph 1. Ensure legacy donors are consolidated under pseudonymous trusts. Maintain plausible deniability. Introduce a public-facing foundation, pseudo-philanthropy, to absorb small-scale scandal. A line, scrawled in the margin in a hurried hand, read, E cleared. Emma read it 3 times until the letters blurred into an accusation. The psychological pressure became a weather system of its own. She slept with lights on. Mirrors seemed to host other eyes. She stopped answering Aaron. When she walked, she kept to shadowed alleys and memorized the faces of the people who followed her. At the far edge of that night, she found herself in a rented office Cal had insisted, on a small, windowless space above a locksmith. He handed her a file with coordinates and phone records. They showed a pattern, old phone numbers tied to shell corporations pinging a small central hub of activity in the city. The hub's registered address matched a name she was beginning to feel like a bruise. Black Crest Education Fund. You know why they'd use education? Cal murmured. Because education is both vulnerable and sacred. It's the perfect place to hide a ledger. People don't ask who funds their kids' lunches. They ask who gets the plaques. Emma stared at the map. Dots of light linked like constellations. Cal leaned closer. There's one person in these records who keeps appearing behind the curtains. She signs as E. Pierce in some memos and as Dr. Evelyn in board minutes. Then she disappears. People say she died in a fire. Others say she left the country. Somewhere between those versions, the Blackwing found room to breathe. Emma's mouth tasted like iron. The woman on the memos E. Pierce was named in her mother's note. The photograph, the baby inscription, for Emma. The truth is in the wings. It had always felt poetic. Now it felt like an instruction. They followed a trail to an art dealer's storage unit that held a commissioned sculpture. 2 wings folded like a book. The plaque read nothing. The underside had a code. The code unlocked a network of digital breadcrumbs, email chains, a private server, a voice log. They played it on a cracked laptop. A voice, tired and measured, read a list of names and a single directive: maintain influence. Phase 2 begins when the wings are seen again. At the end, the voice chuckled an unsteady little sound. Names are instruments, it said. Play them so people sing. Emma breathed and felt the world tremble. She had been invited into a story that had been written around her before she knew how to read. The more she learned, the narrower the corridors became. The Black Wing was not only an organization. It was an etiquette, a grammar of influence that swallowed names and spat out obedience. On a morning when the city had the pallor of someone who had seen too much, Emma walked to the address listed on one of the memos. A townhouse with curtains so thick no light escaped. She rang. No answer. She circled the block. A camera above a bakery pivoted slowly to follow her. When she returned, a neighbor, an old woman who fed pigeons, called out, "You're the one on the papers, right? Be careful." She handed Emma a scrap of paper a child had thrown away, a smear of ink shaped like a wing. Emma folded the scrap and pocketed it. She felt the weight of a ledger that had never been balanced. At night, alone, she played the voice log again. This time she listened for a cadence, a tick, any human thing that would make the voice mortal and not a myth. It was in the pause before the final sentence, a breath, a barely audible inhalation. It matched a photo of a hand she had found in her mother's, a tiny scar across the knuckle. Emma traced the scar on the photograph and then on her own hand. There was no scar there. Her palm tightened. Somewhere, someone had decided what names would mean. Somewhere, someone had decided Emma's story would become useful. She thought of the man in the gray coat, of Mrs. Lawson's folded pity, of Cal's tired eyes. She thought of Aaron's warm, ordinary life, how easy it would be to slice through and find no blood. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She let it ring. The screen glowed. A text appeared. For words. Watch the eastern sky. Noon. She looked up through the curtains. The day was indifferent. The city hummed. The wings in her head unfolded like maps she had not asked for. Emma felt, suddenly, like someone waiting for a performance she hadn't auditioned for. When power is built on names, it is only ever one ledger entry away from collapsing. The trick is knowing which page to tear. Emma stood at the window, the black wing scrap in her palm, listening for the sound of the sky. Noon was an hour away, and in the block between now and then, someone was already writing the next line. Noon arrived like an interrogation. The city held its breath in the pale wash of winter light. Emma stood at the back of a small rooftop that overlooked the square where the Phase 2 demonstration was scheduled, a carefully staged education summit that, according to the memos, would announce a network of donor initiatives and seal a new round of influence. Cameras lined the plaza like a row of patient eyes. People in tailored coats drifted toward podiums. The Black Wings birds were gathering. Emma's hands were an atlas of the weeks behind her, a ledger of names in a battered notebook, a scrap of winged ink folded into a pocket, the phone she'd used to record memos and conversations hot to the touch. Cal Turner had managed to secure her a small slot on the news feed. He owed her a favor and a conscience. The price had been scratches on his reputation, threats to his inbox. He gave her a look that said, "We do what we can with the pieces we have." She nodded. She had a plan that required nothing like violence, only exposure, context, and the brutal truth. If the Black Wing believed names and reputations were instruments, she intended to play them until the melody collapsed. At precisely 11:57 a.m., she slipped into the control van behind the staging. A technician, distracted by the pomp, left his panel unattended. Emma's pulse thudded. Cal's instructions were in her ear. "When you're ready, push the green. The feed goes live, and the files follow. Speak just enough to make people listen." She hit the switch. The plaza filled a second later with a sound like someone turning a key in the world's lock. Giant screens that had been set to display flattering shots of donors flicked. For a beat, a curated video of glossy classrooms played. Then the feed glitched, stuttered, and replaced itself with a rolling stream of document. Photographs, bank transfers, meeting minutes stamped with that imperfect black wing. Gasps rose in the crowd. The curator of the summit, a man with the kind of smile that never met his eyes, tried to cut the feed. Someone else attempted to jostle the control board. Emma stood on the rooftop and read. Her voice was calm, precise, and terrible. "My name is Emma Rivera," she said into the microphone that Cal had pushed her way. "These documents show where the money came from and where it went. They show who sat on the boards and who pretended not to hear the phone calls that mattered. This is not about charity. It is about currency clothed in compassion." She read names. She read ledgers. She read the memo with the line that had wounded her most. EP cleared, Phase 1 successful. She said the name as if testing a tooth. Dr. Evelyn Pierce. At the mention, a ripple ran through the plaza. On one of the side screens, a short archival clip they'd found in a shuttered server played. Evelyn Pierce at a podium years ago, smiling for a camera, hand ink-stained as she signed a plaque. The crowd's mood folded, confused, into something sharper. That was when Mrs. Lawson moved. She pushed through the cluster of aides and stepped up to the press pit. For weeks, Emma had imagined this woman as a villain or a victim. Neither label fit. Mrs. Lawson's face was older than the director's job gave her credit for. Her eyes were wet, not with fear, but with a clarity Emma hadn't seen in them before. "I kept quiet," Mrs. Lawson said into a microphone she'd taken from a young reporter. "Because I thought if I was quiet, donations would reach the kids. I thought smaller compromises could protect larger goods. I was wrong." Emma watched as the director held up a folder and tossed it onto the lectern. The folder splayed open like a palm. Inside were photocopies of checks, letters of instruction, an email where Mrs. Lawson had been pressured with a phrase she never used aloud. "We hold the ledger, you hold the door." "I was afraid," Mrs. Lawson continued. "They said my family would lose food. They sent men to watch the pantry. They promised us grants if we stayed quiet. So I stayed quiet." The plaza hummed. Cameras fed the confession to millions. For a minute, Mrs. Lawson's guilty humanist broke the machinery. Her admission punctured the narrative the Black Wing had built, that everything was neutral, that donations were always pure. From the stage, a man in a dark suit, one of the board members whose name had just scrolled on screen, barked into a phone. Emma saw him glance at a small earpiece and then toward a black SUV idling at the curb. Two men in coats moved to retrieve it. That's when a figure slipped through the crowd and into the press area, a woman with a measured step and a face that had been photographed in stacks of memos. Dr. Evelyn Pierce. She had not, in the end, been a ghost or myth on the screen. There she was, mid-50s, hair streaked with gray at the temples, eyes like a ledger balance, harsh, astonished, and oddly relieved. Emma's mouth went dry. The photograph in her mother's box, the inscription for Emma. The truth is in the wings. The memo that said EP cleared, everything folded into a single point of pressure. Evelyn walked up to the lectern. No fanfare. No handlers. She looked at Emma as if reading a long sentence she had written years earlier and now had permission to finish. "You read us well," Evelyn said. Her voice was not the smug, predatory tone Emma had expected. It was a tired, small thing that bore the weight of decisions only she could have made. Names are instruments. Instruments can be played beautifully or horribly. I played mine badly. The plaza held its breath. Emma had 1,000 questions. Why the fire? Why the memo? Why had E. Pierce's name been on her mother's note? Evelyn's eyes flicked to Mrs. Lawson and then to Emma. "I am not absolving myself," she said. "I built what I thought I could control. We used influence to keep certain experiments out of public light. We convinced ourselves it was for the greater good. It wasn't. We created a machine that learned to preserve itself." She paused. "There are people in this system who cannot be simply removed. They are invested in the ledger." She turned to address the cameras. "I have been trying to dismantle what I started. It is messy, but it begins with naming and with letting children keep their lunches without strings attached." Emma felt a trembling in her hands like the moment a dam gives. Evelyn stepped down from the lectern and walked straight to Emma, closing the last 10 feet of distance between them in 5 strides. "Your mother," Evelyn said softly, "left because she understood the cost. She wanted the ledger to be found by someone who would not want to own the power it represented. She wanted the truth, not leverage." Emma's chest opened and then closed. "Then why hide it?" she asked. Evelyn looked at her as if she were seeing the woman she might have once been. "Because to dismantle a machine, you sometimes have to feed it a finer grain than truth. You have to starve it of its currency." The plaza dissolved into a roar, part scandal, part victory. The Blackwing's carefully constructed scaffolding groaned under the weight of public light. Broadcasts cut into regular programming. Headlines began to bloom like black flowers across social feeds. Phone calls that had once bent knees in office corridors found no shadowed doorway left to hide behind. But the machine was not a single thing. As cameras panned, Emma noticed movement not chaotic but coordinated. A team of suited men and women gathered near the SUV. One of them slipped something into a courier's hand, a small device, unremarked, like a wick. Evelyn's face hardened instantly. She saw it too. Her fingers closed around Emma's hand, steady and inexplicable. "Run," she said. They moved through the back of the crowd, through service alleys and a maze of delivery bays. Evelyn protective like a mother who had both built and mourned the thing she birthed. Emma ran with her, the wind slicing the plaza noise into shards. Cal and a few reporters followed, shouting questions into mics. At the edge of the building, a courier hopped into a motorcycle and sped down the avenue. A second later, too close to be a coincidence, a delivery truck notched across the intersection. It should have been routine. Instead, it exploded into a column of light and paper and sound, precisely placed to sever the feed to the plaza and to shift attention from names to spectacle. Screams rose. Smoke and dust filled the square. Cameras scrambled. In the chaos, men in plain clothes grabbed bundles from beneath the truck's shattered panels and began to run. Evelyn and Emma were knocked back by the blast wave. When Emma rose, coughing, she saw Mrs. Lawson on her knees, pulling a baby from a stroller towards safety. Evelyn's hand was gone from hers. Emma pushed back through the crowd, the world narrowing to faces streaked with ash. She found Evelyn on the pavement, head bowed, blood at the temple. Reporters and onlookers circled. A man in a dark suit cradled a small device, a black object with a wing stamp, humming faintly. Evelyn's eyes fluttered. "They never stop at ledger," she whispered. "They stop at people. They will erase us if they can't own the record." She tried to smile. "You did what I couldn't finish." Emma held her. Cal shouted into his phone for an ambulance. The sirens were a distant tide. Emma looked up at the sky. Dust clouded it, and for a second, shapes formed, not wings exactly, but angles that mocked the emblem that had led her here. Evelyn's breath slowed and then steadied. She squeezed Emma's hand once, with surprising force. "Make sure they remember the children," she said. "Not the names. The children." Emma nodded into a face she had begun to think of as enemy and finally understood as a broken, regretful conspirator. Who did this? Emma demanded. Evelyn's mouth moved. The word was small and intended only for Emma. Voss. Before Emma could respond, Evelyn's gaze fluttered shut. A medic was there, hands doing the practiced rituals of triumph. The plaza, once a stage for names, was now a field of smoke and shards. Networks crashed and rebooted. Pundits recalculated narratives on the fly. Cal found Emma, his face a map of exhaustion and something like awe. "We got them," he said, voice an unsure chant. "They'll be arrested. The files are online. The board members, some of them, they're being questioned." Emma wanted to believe. She wanted the machine toppled because someone had read names out loud. Instead, she felt the slow ache of consequence. The ledger entry had been exposed, but the people who had built the ledger were adaptive animals. They would scuttle and regrow, because systems are not only built of names, but of needs and fears and the soft things that make people compromise. On the way down the service stairs, Emma's pocket buzzed. An unknown number. She pulled it out with hands that trembled. A text, for words. "You've only read the index." Below it, a photograph downloaded itself. A tight shot of a ledger page Emma had not seen, one with a list of foundations and, at the bottom, a single bracket that connected names to institutions, and then chillingly, a final note. Phase 3, Institutionalization. Emma looked up at the square above, where cranes already began to sweep away debris. The eastern sky, once ordered and pale, now held a smear of smoke and the faint, almost ritual shape of the Black Wing. She had torn a page out of a ledger that fed on secrecy. She had screamed names into the light and watched structures tremble. But a ledger is a book of many pages, and someone, somewhere, was already turning the next one. Emma slid the photograph back into her pocket. She had exposed the index. She had lit an ember. Now she had to decide which pages to burn next. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the story. Kindly subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and like this video. See you in the next video.